Hello everyone, I did an email interview with Victor Villarreal, creative director of Once Lost Games, the company behind Wayward, the spiritual successor to the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall. For those who do not know, in mid-2024 the team launched a Kickstarter campaign with the goal of raising $500,000 to fund one full year of development on an early access build, with the hope of then finding a publisher. The campaign reached its goal within 12 days, and as of August 2025, the team has raised more than $800,000. In this video, I asked the team some questions about the progress they've made since the Kickstarter campaign and discuss a few systems. So let's get into it then. First of all, our condolences to all of you at Once Lost Games at this difficult time. Julian LaFay's passing is a loss for the Elder Scrolls community too. In your statement, you mentioned how Julian's vision for Wayward is deeply embedded in the development process. Can you briefly talk about the design philosophy of Wayward as envisioned by Julian?
Sure. So Julian's design philosophy, I think you can kind of boil it down to two things, and then like a major focus that he was wanting, which those would be scope, realism, and then the virtual game master, the VGM. Those were the three things he was really focused on for Wayward Realms. Obviously with scope, we've talked a lot about it, and the size of the world is something that's really important to us. Julian always wanted it to feel real. It should feel like a real place, not like the sort of modern RPG theme park that we get, where everything's just small and condensed and just waiting for the player to walk by for something to happen, and the whole world waits on the player for anything to really occur. With Wayward Realms, we want the world to be its own thing. The world is living, breathing, things are happening, it's in motion with or without the player. And if you want, you can interact with it and you can change things around and leave your mark on it, but otherwise it's there with or without you doing its own thing, which also goes hand in hand with the realism sort of aspect that Julian wanted. Because again, like, it shouldn't feel like it's a theme park. It shouldn't feel like it's just waiting on you. It should feel real. It's a real place. And that goes down to say the weapon and armor designs or the creature designs. We don't want crazy shoulder pads and swords with all sorts of spikes on them. They should feel real. They should feel like something functional. They should feel like something that could have existed in history. And like with creatures, we have creatures that are part of an ecosystem. They're not just, magic monsters that, wouldn't really exist. They feel grounded. They belong there. They're part of the environment. And then finally, the other thing that Julian was really passionate about was the virtual game master, because he wanted to sort of blur that line between the tabletop game master and video games. One of the things he said is, and I'm paraphrasing here, so it's not word for word what he said, but he basically said the worst role play session that you could have is really the tabletop role play session you could have is really the best video game session that you could have. And he always wondered, why is it so hard to blur that line? Why can't we make those video games feel more like a tabletop game where it's more reactive to the player and is really just it's catered to what you're playing, right? It's fun because it's bent around your player or your character and the things they can experience. And that's kind of what he wanted to do with the VGM. So the VGM, for those who don't know, pretty much takes all this information about the player, who they are, what they're playing as, what skills they have, what their preferences are. And it tries to give you quests and interactions that coincide with that makes sense with that. And it's a little different from the theme park world where I said, the theme park is just waiting on the player to do anything. This is more of the interactions that you get make sense for the character that you are, as opposed to just being generic quests that, maybe your thief character doesn't want to go save the king. Why would they? right? So in that sense, the VGM would know that, and hey, it's going to give you quests to maybe go steal something from the king instead. And so that's really the sort of line that he wanted to break, and really blend the two types of games that we have, the tabletop and the video game. Those three things are really was things that he was very passionate about, that we're trying to bring to life here with Wayward Realms.
It has been more than a year since the Kickstarter campaign ended. Can you share the progress made over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many different things that have come online. It's really hard to just drop a list of everything that we've done. I guess one of the big things we've done since then, well, really since December, was sort of lean more into the 80s art style. Our previous art style, we had some of it in there, but it wasn't enough, and it was kind of feeling a little too generic. So we're leaning more into that, really wanting to make it feel like, say, like an old AD&D art book, or just that old 80s fantasy, and the kind of looks that you would find in that. So that way it's more unique. It has its own style that you don't really see very much of anymore. As far as in-game progress stuff, we've built out our island. It has generated forests and foliage all throughout it. We've been doing the city, so we can now place a city. You place really large cities. It adapts to the terrain, so if it's like on a hill, your houses fit along the slope. It spawns roads throughout it. Likewise, the crowds, we've gotten those up and running, so you'll have people walking around. They have really basic schedules right now. It's something that we'll keep improving and adding upon, but you got your people and they're walking around, they're heading places. We've also been doing a lot with the combat. We've got melee in. Our magic is actually further along than we thought we would be. We've gotten that done a lot quicker than we originally anticipated. And range combat, we just got up and running. And obviously, again, that's something else we'll keep expanding on until early access, and then beyond that as well. So still a little basic right now, but those three play styles are in. You can spawn enemies throughout the island, different kinds. In the dungeons as well. The dungeons themselves, those are up and running. We've got a bit more variety in it. You can have some outdoor sections now as well. And I mean, it's still a work in progress, so we'll still want to add a lot more variety to them, but we can spawn them, we can put them out there in the map. Currently working on expanding more like weaponry and outfits for the NPCs and the player. We actually have the layers system for our player character. So that includes like an innerwear, which would be your clothing, the armor layer, and then your outerwear, which would be something like cloaks or tabards, that kind of stuff. So we've got that framework all in, and now it's really just a matter of adding that variety, adding all those different bits of armor and clothing and things that you can wear and change out and kind of get your own unique style for. So lots of stuff. It's definitely a lot more than I can list, but I think you get the general idea. And we will have a devlog coming out soon, so you guys can get a good look at the game and what we've got to offer so far.
That's great progress. So you had shared a mock-up of the character sheet where we saw attributes, major skills and minor skills. I want to know if Wayward Realms is a character skill-based RPG, or is the player skill the main focus? Just to give you some examples, in Morrowind as well as in Daggerfall to an extent, the player had no real role in the success of picking a lock or disarming a trap or hitting an opponent or casting a spell. Lockpicking is based on your character's lockpicking skill and not how well you, the player, can complete a minigame. Hitting an enemy with a sword has everything to do with the character attributes and weapon skill. I would love to know the approach of Wayward Realms in this regard.
The main focus is the character and your skills. It's really, harkening back to those old RPGs, because now what you get a lot is really action RPGs, and it's all about player skill and your ability dodge and attack, at a certain time frame. Especially with what the Souls games have introduced to the video game space. Like, a lot of people really go for that player skill now, and we're aiming to pull it back to the character skill, and really it's determined by what skills you choose, what you improve upon, and the situations that you put yourself in. And it's just all down to character skill. Even say like damage isn't determined by the weapon that you have, it's determined by your weapon skill. So, and then your weapon skill determines your base damage, and then the weapon can do a bonus or a minus depending on the weapon type. And then we also have resistances and weaknesses that will also play a role in it. But your skill is the primary determinant of that damage, and that's really the sort of philosophy that we take into all of it. We really want it to be about the character, not the player.
Awesome. I expected Wayward Realms to be a character skill-based RPG, but I needed your confirmation. So that's great. Alright, so when building a character, can a player select a set of skills that end up being a weird combination? Like, for example, a player wants to roleplay as a merchant, buy a ship, transport goods with a heavy focus on etiquette, athletics, medicine, barter, and other non-combat skills. Is that possible? Or playing as a murder hobo adventurer the only option?
Well, we do want to support a bunch of different play styles, right? Right now, we're still limited because, again, we are just still barely building out all the systems. So the major focus right now has been on the top three: the warrior, the thief, and the mage. That classic combo there, and we'll keep expanding on that and supporting more and more play styles. But we really wanted to make sure that those three feel really good, feel really solid, because those three and sort of a combination within those are primarily what players play as. So we definitely want those to feel good. We'll keep expanding and supporting those other play styles. I do want to mention that it's important to keep in mind that the game is focused on an adventure simulator. So, we know players want to play as merchants, want to be farmers, want to be a blacksmith. Those are really out of scope for what we're doing. The player will be an adventurer, and there's different ways you can be an adventurer in there, but you're really not taking on a trade. You won't be a merchant. You can sell things, of course, but it's not all about the merchant play style or trying to grow crops or anything like that. We really want to focus in on the adventure gameplay loop and make sure that it's the best that we can make.
I read in your Discord that a character's major skills can be leveled up to 100, minor skills can be taken up to 50, and auxiliary skills are capped at 25. Can you briefly explain the leveling system? When a player reaches a new level, what do they have to do?
So I guess the important thing to point out with the leveling system is that there is no player level. That just doesn't exist. It's really all about the skills, like I mentioned before. That's the major focus. You do have attributes, and depending on your race, you'll get bonuses to attributes as well. But really, it all comes down to your skills. The more you use them, the more they improve, and as they improve, your attributes will improve alongside them. So, like, say you're a swordsman, the more you attack things with your sword, the higher that skill is going to get, the more damage you'll be able to do. And then also your related attributes like strength and dexterity will be going up alongside it, and with the other skills that you're racing as well. As for the numbers themselves, those aren't final. It's very unlikely that they're final. And really the whole point of the early access is that we do want to get all that feedback from players and really figure out, like, is that a good number? Should they be higher? Should they be lower? So expect any numbers within early access to change by the final release. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, very cool. I want to talk about the questing system of the Wayward Realms. I read that there won't be a main quest, but we will have faction quest lines, city town quests, and side quests. Now, for the early access build, what percentage of these quests are dynamically generated by the quest system? And will we have handcrafted quests?
So handcrafted quests are very important. I know it kind of doesn't seem like it when we talk about like having procedural quests and no main quests and stuff, but we do want those handcrafted narratives, and those are important to us. All the 5 major factions that we have for early access, they all have handwritten storylines already. And then, of course, we will also do some side quests and other things like that for players to experience that will be all handcrafted. But we do, like, obviously the procedural quests are a major focus of the game as well. And that's really just the point of those is that it reacts to the player, what they've been doing in the world, how the world has been changing. So it feels more like that world is alive and that the player has done something in it. And that's why those are important. As for the percentage, it's kind of hard to really say. Technically, they're infinite, an infinite amount of generated quests. However, again, it's still early, so things are being fleshed out. So it's probably a little more repetitive right now, as opposed to how it will be later on when we've been able to add more variety, more abilities for the VGM to choose from. So a little limited. It's really more a matter of like we have this set amount of handcrafted content, and then everything else is supplemental generated quests.
So I want to talk about the questing system again. So let's go back to the merchant character. Here's a character who is not interested in dealing with factions. His interests are in trading and doing menial jobs for people in cities and towns. He has no interest in dungeon delving. What type of quests can such a character get from the questing system?
Well, right now it's going to be very limited. Again, it's still early. We don't have as much variety as we want in the system just yet. But then again, we also aren't really supporting a merchant character gameplay loop. It's really an adventure gameplay loop. So you are going to limit yourself if you're trying to just be a merchant, because that's not the gameplay loop that we are supporting. You'll be able to do some stuff. Obviously, we do want an economy to be shifting with the world events and stuff like that. So you can buy high in some place, or buy low in some place and sell high at another. But don't expect like a really satisfying merchant gameplay loop or any other kind of gameplay loop that's not strictly the adventure gameplay loop.
Okay, that's perfectly understandable. I want to know how Wayward Realms generates dungeons. So Daggerfall dynamically generated the layout of dungeons, whereas Starfield went with the approach of spawning handmade dungeons taken from a pool of pre-created collection. Can you share some details on the team's work on dungeon creation?
Yeah, well, one thing very important for folks that don't know is that Daggerfall generated its dungeons by piecing together modular pieces. A module would be like a set number of like hallways and rooms and stuff. This had already been created, and then pieces together with another one that's, something along the same lines, right? Like Privateer's Hold, the opening dungeon is one single module. And so you could go into another dungeon later on that has Privateer's Hold within it, but it's connected to, say, like a cave system and a keep and something like that. So it's kind of limited and repetitive, even though they were so big. And once you knew the module, you'd come to recognize the module and be like, okay, well, there's a hidden door right there because that's in every single module of this type. And we really wanted to get away from that. So with Wayward Realms, we're using wave function collapse to create the dungeons. And wave function collapse is actually something that's used for Caves of Cud world generation. Actually, I think they were the first people to implement that into a video game. So, and basically what that allows us to do is have completely unique layouts for the dungeons. It's just generating the rooms and the hallways as it goes. And really the variety there's going to come from the types of dungeon pieces that we have, whether that be like, say, like the walls, the doorways, the pillars, floors, roofs, all these different pieces that we build that it has to work with. And on top of that, there'll be themes. So like there's like, the orcish style, the human style, dwarven style, ancient ruins, graveyards, castles, all that kind of thing. That's going to determine the look of it and really add a lot more variety to the dungeons themselves. It should give us a lot of of unique looks and unique layouts, and hopefully not feel as repetitive as Daggerfalls were.
What is the core gameplay loop that players can experience with the early access build?
Yeah, so kind of like what I mentioned before, the core gameplay loop is the adventure gameplay loop. And when you really boil it down, that's like get a quest, go to a dungeon, complete the quest, come back to the quest giver. Right? Obviously, Daggerfall was definitely a dungeon delver. You're always going to a dungeon or to somebody's house. And we aim to have a bit more variety, but again, here at the beginning, it'll mostly be, go to a dungeon to achieve X, or go to a house and whatever. And we'll of course keep adding more variety. Like obviously the super simple things are go kill somebody or go retrieve this item. And again, those will be here at the beginning, but we hope to keep expanding on that and making it more varied and more interesting. But again, if you want to break it down, you get a quest from an NPC, you go to the location where you need to complete it, get whatever it is done, whether kill a person or retrieve an item or whatever. And then you come back to the quest giver, you get your rewards, you go to your merchant, you sell your loot, you upgrade your equipment, you get stronger basically, and then you're ready to go do it again.
Okay, finally, everyone wants to know this. When can players expect the early access build?
Well, we still don't have a set date for it yet. Obviously, we're working really hard. We're pretty sure we can get it by the end of this year, which has been the goal. There's always a potential that we can fall behind. It's video game development, so delays are nothing new. I think we've all seen them before. But really, we want to just make sure that we have something fun, something solid, something players can enjoy, which we think we can by the end of the year. But if it's not quite there, we don't mind pushing back a little bit just to make sure it is a good experience. Because even though, yes, it's early access and we do expect a lot of things to not be, fully implemented, and we really want people's feedback in order to make sure that we are making this the best game that we can. We still do want to give our backers something that's really fun and really enjoyable, and something that sort of fills that promise that we've given, right? That Daggerfall spiritual successor. So if it's not quite Daggerfall yet, then we might push back a bit. But so far, looking like the end of this year is doable.
Thank you, Victor, for taking time to do this. Alright guys, that was a discussion with the Once Lost Games team. And what questions do you have for the team? Do write in the comments below and I shall get them answered for you. I leave you with Dream Time as usual, and I shall see you soon for another Wayward Realms update. All the relevant Once Lost Games links are in the description. May the gods of the archipelago watch over you.